I declined to be in my sister's wedding after she demanded I lose 50 pounds to fit her aesthetic. My parents called me selfish, so I skipped the whole event and took a solo vacation instead. I, 28F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Melissa, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child, beautiful, popular, and seemingly perfect in every way. I, on the other hand, was the chubby, bookish introvert who never quite measured up in our parents' eyes. Our childhood was a study in contrasts. Melissa was the star of every school play, captain of the cheerleading squad, and prom queen. I was the girl who spent lunchtimes in the library, joined the debate team, and was more likely to be found backstage running tech for the school plays than performing in them. Despite our differences, I always tried to maintain a decent relationship with Melissa. We weren't best friends by any means, but I thought we were at least on good terms. I cheered for her successes, consoled her after breakups, and even stood up to our parents a few times when I felt they were putting too much pressure on her to be perfect. That's why, when Melissa got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Jake, about a year ago, I was genuinely happy for her. I even helped her celebrate with a small family dinner, cooking her favorite meal and buying a bottle of her preferred champagne. I thought maybe, just maybe, this could be a turning point in our relationship. Oh, how naive I was. Things started to go downhill when she asked me to be one of her bridesmaids. At first, I was touched. I thought this might be a chance for us to bond and grow closer as sisters. I even started to get excited about the prospect of dress shopping, planning the bachelorette party, and all the other traditional bridesmaid duties. About 8 months before the wedding, Melissa invited me over to her place to discuss bridesmaid duties and dresses. I spent the morning getting ready, even putting on a bit of makeup and my favorite outfit. I stopped by a bakery on the way and picked up some of Melissa's favorite cupcakes, thinking we'd have a nice sisterly chat over coffee and cake. I was so excited, I even texted my best friend, Sarah, about it. On my way to Mel's to talk wedding stuff. Fingers crossed for some sister bonding time, crossed fingers, bride, female sign, dress. Sarah replied almost immediately, "Good luck. Remember, no matter what happens, I've got your back. Call me after?" 2 hearts. I didn't think much of Sarah's cautiousness at the time. I probably should have. As soon as I arrived at Melissa's perfectly decorated apartment, she's an interior designer and her place always looks like it's straight out of a magazine, I knew something was off. Melissa's smile seemed forced, and she didn't even comment on the cupcakes I'd brought. She just put them in the kitchen without offering me one. We sat down at her dining room table, and that's when she slid a folder across to me. Confused, I opened it to find a strict diet and exercise regimen, along with before and after photos of previous brides and bridesmaids who had undergone dramatic weight loss transformations. "What's this?" I asked, my stomach already sinking. The cupcakes in the kitchen suddenly felt like a mockery. Melissa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, sis, I've been thinking about the aesthetic I want for my wedding. I'm going for a very sleek, high-fashion vibe. All my bridesmaids need to fit a certain look." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Are you saying?" She nodded, her smile never wavering. "I need you to lose 50 pounds before the wedding. It's the only way you'll fit into the dresses I've chosen and look good in the photos." I was stunned into silence. 50 pounds? In 8 months? That wasn't just unrealistic, it was dangerous. Not to mention the fact that I was actually quite comfortable with my body as it was. Sure, I wasn't model thin like Melissa, but I was healthy, active, and happy with myself. I'd worked hard to get to that point of self-acceptance, after years of feeling like I didn't measure up. "Melissa," I began carefully, trying to keep my voice steady, "I appreciate you wanting me in your wedding, but I don't think I can lose that much weight in such a short time. More importantly, I don't want to. I'm happy with my body as it is." Her smile finally faltered, replaced by a look of annoyance. "Don't be so selfish. This is my wedding we're talking about. I've dreamed about this day my entire life, and I won't have it ruined because you're too lazy to put in a little effort." "A little effort?" I was fuming but tried to keep my cool. "It's not about effort, Melissa. It's about health and self-respect. I won't put my body through extreme measures just to fit your aesthetic. If that means I can't be in your wedding, then I guess that's how it has to be." Melissa's face turned red with anger. "Fine. If you're going to be this selfish, then you're out of the wedding party. In fact, maybe you shouldn't come at all. I don't need your negativity ruining my special day." With that, she stormed out of the room, leaving me sitting there in shock. I gathered my things and left, my mind reeling from what had just happened. As I got into my car, I noticed the perfectly frosted cupcake still sitting on Melissa's kitchen counter through the window. It felt like a metaphor for our entire relationship, my efforts at sweetness left untouched and unappreciated. I sat in my car for a long time, trying to process everything. Eventually, I remembered Sarah's text and called her. As soon as she picked up, I burst into tears. "Oh, honey," Sarah said, her voice full of concern. "What happened?" Through sobs, I recounted the entire conversation. Sarah listened patiently, occasionally making sounds of disbelief or anger on my behalf. "That's absolutely ridiculous," she said when I finished. "You know that, right? You're beautiful just as you are, and Melissa is being incredibly shallow and cruel." Her words helped, but I still felt hollow inside. "I just don't understand," I said. "I thought we were past all this high school drama. I thought she actually wanted me there, you know?" "I know," Sarah sighed. "Family can be tough. But listen to me, you did the right thing by standing up for yourself. You should be proud of that." We talked for a while longer, with Sarah helping me process my feelings and reminding me of my worth. By the time we hung up, I felt a little better, but I knew this was far from over. Over the next few days, I tried to come to terms with what had happened. I was hurt, angry, and frankly, a little relieved. As much as it stung to be essentially uninvited from my own sister's wedding, I knew I had made the right choice in standing up for myself. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. I'm a graphic designer, and I had a big project due for a new client. Focusing on color schemes and typography helped take my mind off the disaster with Melissa. However, my relief was short-lived. A few days later, I got a call from my parents. Apparently, Melissa had given them her version of events, painting me as the villain who was trying to ruin her wedding out of jealousy. "How could you do this to your sister?" my mom demanded as soon as I picked up the phone. "This is supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and you're making it all about you." I tried to explain my side of the story, but they weren't having it. In their eyes, Melissa could do no wrong, and I was just being difficult as usual. My dad even suggested that maybe I should consider the diet plan, saying, "It wouldn't hurt you to lose a few pounds, sweetheart. And it would mean so much to your sister." I was devastated. Not only had my sister essentially kicked me out of her wedding for not conforming to her ideal body type, but now my parents were taking her side and suggesting that I should change myself to please her. It was like being a teenager all over again, constantly feeling like I wasn't good enough. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, replaying the conversations with Melissa and my parents over and over in my head. Around 3 a.m., I got up and went to my computer. I started looking at old family photos, searching for, I don't know what. Proof that there was a time when I was accepted as I was? Evidence that my family once loved me unconditionally? As I scrolled through the photos, a pattern emerged. In almost every family picture, I was on the periphery. Melissa was always front and center, with our parents beaming proudly at her. I was off to the side, often partially cut off or looking away from the camera. It was a visual representation of how I'd felt my entire life, like an outsider in my own family. That's when I made a decision. If my presence was going to cause so much drama and negativity, then maybe it was best if I wasn't there at all. And if I wasn't going to be at the wedding, well, why should I sit at home feeling sorry for myself? I hung up on my parents mid-lecture and immediately started researching vacation destinations. I had some savings and plenty of unused vacation days at work. It was time to do something for myself for a change. After some consideration, I booked a 2-week trip to Bali. It was somewhere I'd always wanted to go but never had the courage to travel to alone. Well, no time like the present to be brave, right? The next morning, I requested the time off work. Thankfully, my boss was understanding and even seemed a bit envious of my spontaneous trip, and started planning what to pack. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. I'd never traveled alone before, let alone to a foreign country. But the thought of escaping the drama and doing something just for me was exhilarating. When I informed my family of my decision not to attend the wedding and that I'd be out of the country, all hell broke loose. Melissa accused me of trying to steal her thunder. "You're just jealous that I'm getting married and you're still single," she spat during a particularly nasty phone call. "You've always been jealous of me." My parents were no better. My mom cried about how I was tearing the family apart. My dad said I was being childish and immature. "You need to grow up and think about someone other than yourself for once," he said, his disappointment palpable even through the phone. Even some extended family members got in on the act, sending me messages about how I was being selfish and ruining Melissa's big day. My Aunt Linda, who had always been kind to me, sent a particularly hurtful email. I've always thought of you as a sensible girl, but this behavior is shocking. Your sister only gets one wedding day. Can't you put aside your own feelings and be there for her? Family should come first. But for once in my life, I stood firm. I told them all that I was done being the family punching bag. I deserved to be accepted and loved as I was, not constantly criticized and asked to change. If they couldn't do that, then I needed some time and space away from them. The day of my departure arrived, and as I boarded the plane, I felt a strange mix of emotions. There was guilt, of course, years of family conditioning doesn't disappear overnight. But there was also a sense of freedom and excitement. For the first time in my life, I was choosing myself. The flight was long, but I used the time to start journaling. I wrote about my feelings, my hopes for the trip, and my fears about what would happen when I returned. By the time we landed in Bali, I had filled half a notebook and felt like I'd begun to process some of my emotions. Stepping off the plane in Bali was like entering another world. The air was warm and fragrant, filled with the scent of tropical flowers and spices. As I made my way to my hotel, I was struck by the vibrant colors, the lush greenery, and the genuine smiles of the locals. My hotel was a small, family-run place near the beach in Seminyak. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and comfortable, with a beautiful garden courtyard where breakfast was served each morning. The owner, a kind-faced woman named Kate, greeted me warmly and showed me to my room. "You are traveling alone?" she asked as we walked. I nodded, feeling a bit self-conscious. "Yes, it's my first solo trip." Kate smiled. "Ah, brave girl. Bali is a good place for finding yourself. You will see." Her words stuck with me as I settled into my room. Finding myself. Was that what I was here to do? The day of Melissa's wedding arrived, and as the angry messages and voicemails piled up on my phone, I was sipping a cocktail on a beautiful Balinese beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. As I watched the colors change, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. For the first time in years, I felt truly at ease. I thought about Melissa, walking down the aisle in her perfect dress, surrounded by her perfectly sized bridesmaids. I hoped she was happy. Despite everything, I did love my sister and wanted her to have a beautiful day. But I also knew that I had made the right choice for myself. Over the next 2 weeks, I had the time of my life. I went on hikes through lush jungles, marveling at ancient temples hidden among the trees. I took a cooking class and learned to make traditional Balinese dishes, filling my senses with new flavors and spices. I tried yoga on the beach, feeling my body stretch and strengthen as the waves crashed nearby. One day, I even gathered the courage to go scuba diving. As I descended into the crystal clear water, surrounded by colorful fish and coral, I felt a sense of wonder I hadn't experienced since childhood. It was like entering a whole new world, one where my size and shape didn't matter, all that mattered was my breath, my movements, and the beauty around me. But it wasn't just the activities that were transformative. It was the people I met along the way. There was Anna, a 30-something lawyer from London who had quit her high-pressure job to travel the world. She taught me about the importance of following your passions, even when it means taking risks. Then there was Miguel, a jovial Spanish chef who was in Bali to learn about local cuisine. He showed me that food could be a source of joy and connection, not something to feel guilty about. We spent an evening at a local market, trying different street foods and laughing at our attempts to communicate with the vendors in broken Indonesian. And I'll never forget Yuki, a petite Japanese woman in her 60s who was traveling solo after the death of her husband. Despite our age difference and language barrier, we formed a quick friendship. She taught me origami on the beach one afternoon, her gnarled hands deftly folding paper into delicate shapes. "Life too short for regret," she told me in her limited English. "You live for you, not for others." These encounters, along with many others, helped me see my life and my struggles from a new perspective. I realized that my worth wasn't determined by my waist size or my family's approval. I was valuable and deserving of love just as I was. As the trip went on, I found myself caring less and less about the messages piling up on my phone. Instead, I focused on the present moment, the feeling of sand between my toes, the taste of fresh mango, the sound of gamelan music drifting on the evening breeze. I also started to notice changes in myself. I felt more confident, more willing to try new things. I struck up conversations with strangers, something I never would have done before. I even let a local artist convince me to model for a painting, posing on the beach in a sarong as the sun set behind me. "You have beautiful curves," the artist, a young woman named Putu, told me as she sketched. "Like the hills of Bali. Full of life and strength." Her words brought tears to my eyes. For the first time in my life, I looked at my body and saw beauty instead of flaws. As my trip neared its end, I felt a mix of sadness and excitement. I was going to miss Bali and the sense of freedom I'd found here. But I was also looking forward to going home and applying what I'd learned to my everyday life. On my last night, I sat on the beach, watching the stars come out over the ocean. I thought about the girl who had arrived in Bali 2 weeks ago, anxious, unsure, seeking escape. When I returned home, tanned, relaxed, and more confident than ever, I found a mountain of messages waiting for me. There were angry rants from Melissa about how I'd ruined her wedding by not being there. Guilt-tripping voicemails from my parents about how embarrassed they were to explain my absence to relatives. Even a few concerned messages from friends who'd heard conflicting stories about what had happened. I took a deep breath and decided to address everything head-on. I wrote a long, heartfelt email to my entire family explaining my side of the story. I was honest about how hurt I'd been by Melissa's demands and my parents' reaction. I explained that I'd needed time away to reflect and heal, and that the trip had been transformative for me. I ended the email by saying that I loved them all, but that moving forward, I needed them to respect my boundaries and accept me as I am. If they couldn't do that, then we would need to reassess our relationships. The responses I got were mixed. Melissa sent back a terse message saying she needed time to process everything. My mom replied with a long, tearful voicemail that wavered between apology and continued guilt-tripping. My dad, surprisingly, sent a short but sincere apology, saying he hadn't realized how much his words had hurt me. Over the next few months, things were tense, but slowly began to improve. Melissa and I started having cautious, polite conversations again. My parents made an effort to be more mindful of their words and actions. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As for me, I continued to nurture the self-love and confidence I'd found in Bali. I started taking more risks in my career, leading to a promotion. I tried new hobbies and made new friends who appreciated me for who I was. I even started dating again, meeting a wonderful guy who thinks I'm beautiful just as I am. Looking back, I don't regret my decision one bit. Yes, missing my sister's wedding was painful, but it was a necessary step in my journey of self-discovery and setting healthy boundaries. I learned that sometimes, the most selfish thing you can do is to stand up for yourself and your well-being. Edit. Wow, I didn't expect this post to blow up like it did. Thank you all for your supportive comments and messages. To address a few common questions. 1. Yes, I did try to have several conversations with Melissa and my parents before deciding to go on the trip. Each time, it devolved into arguments and guilt-tripping, which is why I ultimately decided that creating some distance was the healthiest choice for me. 2. Some people have asked about my current weight/size. I'm a US size 14/16, which is considered plus size in the fashion industry but is actually pretty average for American women. I'm active, eat a balanced diet, and my doctor says I'm in great health. 3. To those suggesting I should cut off all contact with my family, while I appreciate your concern, that's not something I'm willing to do right now. We're working on rebuilding our relationships in a healthier way, and while it's not always easy, I'm cautiously optimistic. Thank you again for all your support. This experience has shown me that sometimes the family we choose can be just as important as the one we're born into. I'm grateful for this community and the kindness you've shown me.